You're on.
Hi, everybody. Today we're doing a vegetarian dish. As I mentioned before, my son's girlfriend is vegetarian, so I've been cooking a lot more vegetarian to accommodate her dietary concerns when they come over for dinner. And normally they come over on Sunday, but I said, hey, I'm doing a vegetarian dish. Why don't you come over on Saturday for dinner instead? So they'll be joining us for supper today. Risotto is one of those dishes that everybody thinks is really complicated, and it's not. It's just a matter of you have to take your time. It is not something that can be rushed. You just have to take your time, let the rice do its thing, let the broth do its thing, and it's going to come out perfect, okay? I did forget one of my ingredients, which was my olive oil, so I'm going to grab that. How are we doing on people watching, Dave?
We've got 9.
Okay. So, for those of you that this is your first time joining us, this is a real house. This is my real kitchen. We have real dogs that may or may not bark at any given time. I say that every single video because they have barked at different times, and it's, you know, it's not a studio. It's a real house. The other thing that I want to do is I want to thank all of the new people who are following along, all of the new subscribers to my blog. Thank you very much, and I promise to write something new soon. And I want to let you know that I love it when you comment. I love it when you share pictures of your food and tag Good for Spooning in it. But when you are watching the video at any time, whether it's before, during, or after, there's no need for you to like every single comment because that doesn't help me, and it makes more work for me to see who's watching. If somebody says something that you absolutely love in a comment, by all means, show them that you cared about it. But comment, share the video out, subscribe. You can follow me on all major platforms, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. All at Good for Spooning. I almost never go on Twitter, though. I'm just going to tell you that straight from. Okay. So I gave you an ingredient list and a shopping list. And here's your ingredient list is really short this week, and your equipment list is really short this week. I've always talked about the flavor ladder. And in a dish that has very few ingredients, the ladder is really important. And the order that you add things to the pan is equally important to create that flavor. Okay? So we're going to start off by getting all of our produce ready to go. We're working with our garlic, our onion, our garlic and our shallots. You might be using onion because I gave you that as an option, and our mushrooms today. So shallots are a member of the onion family, and they are a pain in the ass to peel. Okay, they just are, and you have to get the peel off just like you would an onion. These are kind of small, so I have 3 here. What's really good about an onion, though, shallot, though, you see how it's flat on the side? It's round on the top and flat on the side. Makes it a little bit easier to manage on the cutting board. For people who are novice cooks or are nervous about cutting an onion the way I've shown you. So in this case, when I peel a shallot, I cut the stem end off, and I take my knife and I run it down the flat side just to get the skin to loosen up, and then I peel it off. And like I said, they always stick. I don't know why. They're more difficult to peel than an onion. If one of my chef friends is watching, maybe they can chime in and answer that question for you. I don't know the answer, but it's just one of those things. So one of the tricks that I do is I take a vegetable peeler, which I don't know where it is right now, but I'll take a vegetable peeler to it sometimes and actually hit it like I was peeling a carrot. But it always sticks, and I don't know why. So if you're having difficulty, you're not alone. I am too. So in case
you have a question, what is the difference between a shallot and an onion?
The flavor is slightly different. So a shallot, depending on its breed, can taste anywhere between an onion and a garlic, or it can have a real oniony flavor. It's just a little bit more subtle than a straight up onion. So it gives you a little bit different flavor. You can, in a lot of recipes, you can substitute an onion for a shallot if you don't have one, like I did in this recipe. See how I'm just using this to just grab that skin and peel it off? It might take the top layer of the shallot off, but I'm really not that concerned. But it's just a little bit more subtle
Someone
than an onion.
asked about green onions.
Green onions are an entirely different breed of animal.
I thought they were
They're actually scallions.
Scallion. Green onions are great for garnishes, but they're really not intended for cooking except for the white part. Or if you're going to be cooking with them, you add them at the end. So, as I've shown you before, we're going to take our shallot. This one's kind of small, so we're going to just do one little cut sideways. And we're leaving our root intact to keep it easy. And then we're going to go crossways. And we want this really small because we're working with rice, remember? And we want our pieces to be kind of a uniform size in our mouth. We don't want great big honking pieces of onion with a very delicate size of the rice. So I hope you all looked at the info that I gave you about the rice. So rice is not created equal. There's a gazillion varieties. I think the research that I did said that there's more than 40,000 varieties. And here in the U.S., we don't use that many, to be perfectly honest. Asian cultures, of course, use more rice than anybody else. A lot of their dishes are predicated on rice as a base. And the type of rice that you use is dictated by the recipe a lot of the time. So in this case, we're using arborio or carnaroli, and both of those are short grain rices, and I showed you a picture of them in my little info section. They're both short grain rices, and they have a lot of starch. And what's interesting about the particular type of starch that they have is that when it is combined with a liquid, it releases almost like a gravy. So you get this suspension of the rice actually sitting in a sauce, all of its own making, which is great. So this is my final shallot. And then we're going to work with our garlic, and I'm going to show you a fun little tool that I have. Before anybody asks, my t-shirt is from Pike Brewing in Seattle. I know a lot of people ask what's on my shirt. This one happens to be from a fun brewery up in the Seattle tourist corridor. And
Right on First.
Yep, several years ago when we went, we had the good fortune of meeting the owners and got a private guided tour of their brew house, which was really fun. Okay, so with your garlic, remember, you don't have to do a whole lot. Just slam it down and peel the skin off. Ooh, this one's being tricky. Oh, it's because it's two little cloves stuck together. It grew weird. Let's just get rid of that. And if you have a little blemish, just cut it off and throw it out. It's fine. And I'm going to do one more just for good measure because I like garlic. So last night, John and I participated with Secret Burger here in Las Vegas. And if you're not participating with Secret Burger, you are missing out. Where our local chefs are creating one-night-only dishes. And we have this super garlicky, super spicy crawfish boil. Okay, so this is a little tool.
Before you go, somebody asked if you can use the Pampered Chef chopper for the shallot.
I like mine diced, which means no. If you want yours chopped, okay, so the difference between a dice and a chop. A dice means they're all the same shape. A chop will be the same size as a dice, but the shapes are all going to be irregular. So if you don't mind them being irregular, go ahead and use your chopper. I want mine diced because I want them all to be the same size. I want them to be all the same shape. Okay, I hope that answers your question. And you want them to be an eighth or a quarter of an inch. You want them small. Okay, so this is a groovy little tool that you can buy on Amazon. It is a unitasker. It's only good for one damn thing. And that is crushing the garlic. So what it does, you use it and rock back and forth, and all of your garlic pulp is going to show up on the inside. I hope you can see that. Okay. And we're just going to scrape it out there. Because when you're doing more than just a clove of garlic or so, it's just really simple. I like this better than a garlic press. I get through cloves of garlic faster with this than I do with a garlic press. And I think you waste a lot of product when you use a garlic press. And one of my idols said a garlic press is an abomination and you should never even own one. And that would be Anthony Bourdain. Okay, so take the back of your knife and scrape out the inside. Whenever you're using your knife to gather, you should be using the back. You know, we did the little knife skills class, and I didn't mention that. I don't know why. I should have. But it helps preserve the sharpness of your blade. So now let's move on to our mushrooms, because we're going to start cooking them right away. So I've got 3 different kinds of mushrooms here. I have your basic cremini, which are baby portabellas. I have shiitake mushrooms, which are Asian in origin. And I have these beautiful oyster mushrooms that grow in clusters. So let's start with the baby portabellas, because everybody knows what they are. I'm using an egg slicer to slice them. If you have one, go for it. It's super easy. They all come out the same thickness. It's just a little quick trick. And if you are working on an electric stove, you should have your stock on the stove warming, because we need it to be hot for the application. And I'm going to start my burner now to cook my mushrooms. Okay. Because you never want to start with a cold pan. You always want to start with a warm pan. So I'm getting my pan warmed up while I slice up these mushrooms. If you don't have an egg slicer, you can just slice them by hand. Now, again, mushrooms are one of those things that there's a gazillion varieties out there.
Some of them can kill you.
Some of them can kill you. So yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Don't think that you can just go walk out in the woods and just bring home mushrooms, because there are a lot of poisonous varieties out there. I do have a friend named Mackenzie who actually is a budding mycologist, which is somebody who studies and works with mushrooms. And she actually goes in the Pacific Northwest. She goes out on mushroom hunts. And she brings home some beautiful stuff, and she shares it with me on Facebook. So that's really kind of cool. I would love to do that with her the next time I get up in her neck of the woods. So we're going to end up cooking our mushrooms in batches, because we don't want, if you put them all in the pan at the same time, they're going to end up steaming and they're going to get mushy. And what we want to do is preserve the texture and maintain a meaty texture to the mushrooms. So I'm using clarified butter today.
That's butter.
Clarified butter is butter that all of the milk solids have been removed from. So all this is the butter fat. What's great about having this is that it can work at a much higher temperature than straight up butter. You know, think about the last time you had a really hot pan and you put butter in it and you turned your back for a second and all of a sudden it was burnt. Those are the milk solids that are burning, okay? Not the fat. So we're putting that in there. We're also going to add a little bit of olive oil, just because I like butter and olive oil together. Now, olive oil doesn't have a really high smoke point, but the clarified butter, or ghee, does. And what's going to happen here is you're going to get the flavor of both, but the clarified butter is going to kind of stabilize the low smoke point of the olive oil, so it'll actually be able to work at a higher temperature. I need one more spatula. Okay, so first we're going to take half of our shallots and we're going to put them in the pan. And you should hear a nice sizzle if your pan is hot enough. And we're going to take half of our garlic. And we're going
Somebody wants to know where you get clarified butter.
You make it yourself. Actually, maybe that's a demo, a midweek demo that I could do for you guys. You basically take a pound of butter, you put it in a saucepan, and you bring it to a boil and stir, 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 stir until all of it foams up, and then your milk solids are going to sink to the bottom. And it's a trick because if you let it go too long, it turns into brown clarified butter.
And somebody wants to know how much butter.
I used about a tablespoon and a half for this batch. And you want to stir this, and you're going to want to do this over about medium-high heat because you don't want your shallots and your garlic to burn.
Somebody asked you to slow down.
Okay. Now I'm going to put in my first batch of mushrooms because I don't want my shallots and garlic to burn. And putting cool things into a hot pan brings the temperature of the pan down. So it brings down the temperature of everything that's in there. So we're just going to stir these.
And for those who are unaware, you can actually pause the video to catch up.
Yeah, you can. All you have to do is touch the screen or use your mouse to tap the video, and it'll pause it, and it'll give you the chance to catch up. One of the really great things that I did this week is another Secret Burger event. A local chef who makes my favorite cacio e pepe. Actually,
The person who asked about the butter didn't get the answer, so please give it again.
Okay, so clarified butter.
No, about how much butter.
Oh, a tablespoon and a half.
It's not allowing me to reply.
It's not allowing you to reply?
No.
Sorry. Okay. Turning this down a little. It seems to be working really hot today. Okay. So what we're looking for here with this, see how everything is just a little golden? That's fine. We want to get as much surface area of the mushrooms touching the pan as possible because we want them to get brown. All right. So let's talk about shiitakes. Shiitake mushrooms. Most mushrooms you can eat the stem. Jack, you can hear you. You need to zip it. We can hear you. So the thing about shiitake mushrooms are the only part that you want to eat is the cap. The stems, it's not that they're inedible, it's just that they're really tough. So what you want to do with these stems is set them aside and use them to do a mushroom broth or to enhance your vegetable stock. I mean, even if you buy vegetable stock in the grocery store, just put it on the stove for a few minutes and put your shiitake stems in it, and it will vastly improve the taste of your canned vegetable stock that you buy in the grocery store. Okay. So we're just going to cut these into nice slices, and I do it cap side down just because I find it easier. And I have them stacked 2 at a time. I'll move my clarified butter out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. And these, you want them in about 1/4 inch thick slices. This is going to be a lot of multitasking, by the way. So you're going to be stirring your mushrooms while you're slicing your other ones. And as soon as those look nice and golden, you're going to move them out and make room in the pan for the shiitakes. That's why I said you're going to cook them in batches. You're welcome to ask questions as we go along. Now, I had a problem setting up this particular event. It would only let me invite 50 people, which was, I don't know why, period. Not 50 at a time, 50 altogether. And when I did a video with you guys midweek asking what you wanted me to make, it wouldn't let me respond to anybody's questions. It was weird. So I was having some difficulty with that too. I think Facebook hates me. Okay, so we're going to move these into our reserved bowl here. And it's okay if a little bit stays in there. We're going to add about another tablespoon of butter. And another, just a drizzle of olive oil, just so that you can get the flavor. I cannot do that with my left hand, you guys. I am so right-handed. And now we're going to put in our shiitakes. We're going to do the same thing with them. Okay. Now while those are cooking, we're going to talk about our oyster mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms grow in clusters, and that is the part that actually goes into the soil. So you don't really need that or want it, so you're going to kind of want to hack that off. And you can rinse this and use it in the stock, just like you would the shiitake stems, but rinse it off really well first. Normally you don't rinse mushrooms, you know, and I mentioned this before, because they're little sponges, and they're going to suck up all the moisture, and then they're just going to become soggy messes. So, now if you're only doing one type of mushroom, which is totally fine, you should still be cooking them in batches. You don't want to crowd your pan. Alright, I'm just going to, you know, this doesn't have to be fancy. Oyster mushrooms are, you know, a lot of people cook them whole, but because we're adding these to the risotto, we kind of want them to be bite-sized. And I'm just kind of roughly slicing them across. Nothing, you know, I'm not being particular about my sizing here. And because they're irregular shaped mushrooms, not like the shiitakes that we just saw or the creminis, they're a little bit more difficult to get exactly evenly shaped. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be bite-sized. Now I mentioned in the instruction list that if you were using full-blown adult portabellas, you should be cutting those into 1 inch to 1/2 inch cubes because they're huge. All right, so now we're going to do multitask number 3. We're going to start getting our pan ready to do the risotto itself. So turn your burner on, and you want it medium.
And how has your flavor ladder been building so far?
Okay, so my flavor ladder is my oils, the butter and the olive oil, and then my shallots and my garlic. And now I'm working with my second type of mushroom. And now we're going to have a third one. Now what's going on in this pan, you'll see there's a little bit of fond developing, and we're going to use that too. We're not going to waste all of that beautiful goodness in the bottom of the pan. Whenever you're cooking something in a pan and you develop little brown bits in the bottom, if it's black, it's burnt. But if it's brown, it's considered fond, and it's the basis for a great sauce. So we're actually going to collect that and add it to our risotto. So, you know, a lot of times when you get risotto in a store, or a restaurant rather, it's going to be very pale colored, and it should be, and that's awesome. But usually they're using chicken stock. Now, I made my own vegetable stock, and mine happens to be quite dark. I'm not sure why this particular batch is so dark, but it is. I'm putting another tablespoon of butter in there, and another drizzle of olive oil. And then we're going to add in our last group of mushrooms. Now the thing about mushrooms is they have a lot of moisture in them, especially these oyster mushrooms. So I, if you'll notice, have not added salt up until this point. That's about to change. Oyster mushrooms have a ton of water in them, and we want to use that salt to pull the water out. And remember what I said about cooking with salt, is that if you put it in as you cook, it's going to flavor your dish. If you put it in all at the end, all you're going to taste is salt. I don't know what the numbers on this induction burner mean. All I know is like 1800 is really hot, so I'm trying to do this on medium. Now I have got my chicken or my vegetable stock over here. I'm going to turn it up just a little bit because it's almost hot. Put the stuff that I don't need behind me because I'm done with that. Okay. You see how much those cook down? They're like loaded with moisture. But they are supposed to taste a little bit like an oyster, and they kind of do.
Hence the name.
Hence the name. Now remember also when you're shopping for mushrooms, they should never look wet. They should never look slimy. If you're looking for these creminis or baby buttons, they should have a nice tight cap like that. You see there's no space between the stem and the cap. You want that. That means they're very fresh. Okay. So now we're going to deglaze that pan with a little bit of our vegetable stock. And
Somebody asked why you didn't salt the other mushrooms.
Because there's a lot of mushrooms and they don't have as much moisture in them as the oysters do. And I'm going to be able to add salt later as we go along. So I was trying to control the amount of salt. Remember, we're also going to put Parmesan cheese in this, and Parm's got a ton of salt. So we're kind of taking it easy.
And somebody also asked what's in all the pots right now, or in the pans.
There's nothing.
Nothing in the
Mushrooms are
pan.
out.
What's in the green?
Nothing's in there yet. I'm getting it hot. So we're going to deglaze this. That's my glasses fogged up. Okay, so deglazing a pan means to add a liquid, either stock or wine in some cases, to scrape up the bits of fond. And if you do it correctly, you get up almost everything off the bottom of the pan. It makes it easier to clean up later. I don't know if you can see that. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And it also adds to your flavor ladder. Now, when you're cooking meat, this makes a great pan gravy, and it's super simple, and you just put it on your chicken, your pork, your steak, whatever afterward. Okay, I'm going to shut that pan off now and just let everything in there rest, and we're going to add it to the risotto later. Okay, so my pan is warm enough now. Back to the butter. I'm using, again, the clarified butter, and I'm using about a tablespoon and some olive oil. When those are melted together and they look homogeneous, then you're going to add in, just like I did for the mushrooms, excuse me, we're going to add our shallots, let them soften up and become a little bit translucent. And they're basically, because of the amount of time that we're going to spend cooking and the amount of liquid that we're going to add to this, they're basically going to disappear. You're just going to have a great flavor. Now, for those of you who asked me about not using mushrooms, you should have just skipped everything that I just did. There was a couple people who mentioned either to me in person or...
You dropped some of your garlic right by the spoon.
Oh, thanks. Either in person or in a quick message that they're not big fans of mushrooms. This is where you should be starting, right here. We're going to add just a pinch of salt. I'm using 2 fingers and my thumb. All right, so now we're going to add in our 2 cups of arborio rice. And I normally don't like to cook on electric stoves, But this is one of those situations where an electric stove is actually a bonus because it maintains a consistent, steady temperature. And that helps when making this dish. Okay, so you should have your shallots and your garlic and your rice, and they should all look shiny and beautiful because they're all coated with oil, okay? You don't want to brown the rice, you just want to coat it with the oils. So stir it up really well. And then we're going to put a little hole in the middle. If you watched when I made the cream spinach for the crepes, I make a well in the middle of my rice, okay? Oop, it fell. And then we're going to add the white wine. Now, I know there's some people that don't drink for whatever reason, and that's great. I'm like really happy for you that you're so healthy. When it comes to cooking, when you cook with wine, you're cooking all the alcohol out. So don't worry about that. And we're going to put in a quarter to a half a cup, depending on how much you want. You hear that sizzle, right? You hear it boiling. Now we're going to stir, stir, stir. And you want to cook that until all of the liquid has been absorbed or has evaporated. If you do not do that step, your dish is going to taste like wine. And that's all it's going to taste like.
And on the science end of things, the alcohol has a lower boiling point than water does. So what happens when you add it to heat is the alcohol burns off and evaporates into the air, leaving just the base of the wine.
That's correct, the flavor components. Now when you cook with wine, you should only be cooking with things that you would drink. You're not using that Holland House crap out of the grocery store. And it should be fairly dry, whether it's red or white. So in this case, I'm using a Pinot Grigio. You could use a really dry Chardonnay. I have used some Spanish white wines. I've used all different kinds. If it's good enough for you to drink, it's good enough for you to cook with. And I'm not talking a $40 bottle. I'm talking a $10 bottle, okay? All right, so once all of your wine has been absorbed or evaporated, now we're going to start ladling in our stock, one ladle at a time. And this is where it gets boring, you guys, so I hope you came prepared with your questions. Now, I don't know if you could see how dark my stock is. I'm going to do this really quick. Can you see it? It's not a pale, wimpy-ass vegetable stock. This one's really dark. And it's because it has a lot of mushroom component, I think, because I used a lot of shiitake stems when I did it. I used some portabella stems. And so it really picked up a lot of color. All right, so you should be, this is what you should be looking like right now. You should have a little bit of liquid in there. I don't know if you could see it. Just a little bit of liquid. Because your rice is going to be sucking this up very quickly. Okay? Now your mushrooms are all ready to go in at the very end. So keep them close. And now you can let it sit for a second. Now you should have this at a simmer. Now, a boil is boisterous bubbles like this. Right? A simmer is very small bubbles. Very gentle bubbles. None of this boisterous stuff. Very gentle bubbles. So, you know, one of the things that somebody asked me to teach them how to do is poach an egg. We'll do that in a midweek demo too. But you poach an egg, the bubbles shouldn't even be breaking the surface. That is below simmer. Okay? Simmer means it's very small bubbles that are gently rising to the top. And it's a little hard to tell when you've got the rice in there. But if your rice is spitting, turn your burner down. It's too high. Okay, and as you notice that your rice is starting to dry out, that's when you add your next ladle of stock. Now my ladle holds approximately half a cup, so I'm just doing a half a cup at a time. So when you look at risotto as a finished dish, it's going to, oh, I forgot to take out my serving plates. I'll do that in a minute. It is going to go like this on the plate. It's not going to be a great big mound of sticky, gloppy, wallpaper paste rice. It's actually going to be rice that's in a gravy-like suspension, and it's going to go out like this. Now, I have seen, and I actually watched Wolfgang Puck make his risotto, and that's what he said, and if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Okay. I still have some liquid in here, so I'm just stirring. And the stirring is, you know, the big part of this, because you want to make sure that all of your grains are touching your moisture and that they're all picking up the flavors from the rice, or from the shallot and the garlic. So really, this is what we're going to be doing for the next several minutes. And then we're going to add in Parmesan cheese at the end and some parsley at the end, which we're going to chop up now. You should just take the tender leaves and stems off the top and mince those up. And save your other stems for when you make vegetable or chicken stock, because those are great in that application. Because they have that same flavor, but they're just not as palatable in your mouth texturally. Okay, so we are gonna lay these into my hand like this. This is just a little trick so that you're making a little bouquet. Now, of course, your parsley should be washed and dried, and I showed you how to do that with a paper towel in a different video. And you could use other herbs if you had them and you wanted to. You could use some turtle, or you could use some tarragon. I happen not to like tarragon, so I would never use them. But we're going to use parsley. And you're going to make a pile. And you're going to cut it crossways. I don't know if you can hear my little tap dancing dogs. Take a look at your rice. If it starts to stick, that's okay. Scrape it up from the bottom and add in your next ladle of stock. This time I'm going to add 2, actually.
We had a request to see Jack while we're waiting, but he is currently indisposed, and since I'm unable, for whatever reason, to click reply to anybody on the video tonight.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
So maybe Jack will join us in a little bit. Remember, put your blade down, put your finger on the edge, and rock it back and forth. Scoop it up into a pile. Jackster,
Yes.
somebody requested to see you.
Who's requesting to see me?
I don't know.
Oh.
Your dad didn't tell me that. Here he is. My assistant from the chicken, was it chicken piccata we did together?
Yes.
Yeah. My assistant from the chicken piccata. Here, keep cutting.
You
Now-
wash your hands, right?
You want
Yes.
it. At this
See, now you
point-
get a different angle because Jack is left-handed.
Yeah, because don't scrape with the blade. You know better. At this point, you should be noticing gravy in the bottom of your pan with the rice. Just keep stirring, and I'm actually an ridge crusher. Straight up and down, not at an angle. I'm adding this much salt, 3 fingers and a thumb. looks good. That looks good. Perfect.
All right.
Thank you. So there you go. We're just going to kind of spread that out a little bit to dry. All right. No other questions? I mean, my God, there's an awful lot of stirring time and standing around time. I warned you guys to have your questions ready. I wasn't aware of it.
I'm gonna make appearance because I'm on my way to get yet another
He's going to get a beer.
tasty beverage.
Okay, so you should be adding your stock one ladle at a time and just stirring away. Now, I did ask you guys in a video and a post which recipe. I gave you 3 choices. I asked you which one you wanted me to make, and this one actually had more requests than any of the others. The other recipes were shrimp scampi with a rice pilaf, which is a classic technique to cook rice. And the third one was saltimbocca, and you would get to pick your protein and create your saltimbocca, and I would walk you through that for all 3, chicken, veal, or pork. This had the most yes votes, so this is what we're going to do first. We're going to do the shrimp and the rice pilaf next, because that had the next number of votes. And then we're going to do the saltimbocca on our third, our third up video. But I am going to try and keep this to a midweek one and then a recipe on the weekend every other weekend. So you're going to have plenty of time to want to see me. He didn't have to walk behind me. I'm just going to tell you that. This is a great big island. He could have walked anywhere, but he had to walk behind me. You know why? Because he's so handsome and he wanted you all to see it.
Here I was thinking it was product placement.
Oh, no.
It's advertising for Notebrow. I paid money to have this in there. Damn it, I paid for this show.
Okay, so here when you cook rice normally, any type of rice, you notice that you start out with a cup and you end up with way more than that.
Somebody asked if all of your liquid should be absorbed.
Before you add each ladle, yes, or almost absorbed. Your pan should never run completely dry, but you should definitely be seeing the rice absorbing. So my 2 cups of rice now looks like this. So we've got tons going on here because it's sucking up all that great stock and it's blowing up. Now for 2 cups of arborio, you're going to need 6 to 7, sometimes 8, depending on the rice itself. Sometimes it's drier than others. Sometimes it's a different manufacturer. They pearl it a little bit differently. So that's what I said, 6 to 7. If you end up not being completely cooked with the 7 cups of stock, you could always augment with water. And that's what I may have to do at this point. And you stirring. I mean, seriously, it's like the most boring recipe in the world to make. But the steps are important. So I gotta get a tasting spoon. Now, when you cook macaroni should be firm in the center and tender on the outside. This should be just about the same. You don't want crunchy rice, but you don't want a soggy, mushy mess either. So when you are about 1 cup away from the end of your stock, we're going to start tasting the rice. So let's talk about our flavor ladder again. We have our shallots or onion and garlic, our butter, our olive oil, salt, our mushrooms. We've got our chicken stock or a vegetable stock, whichever one you're using. And you'll notice when we added things to the pan, we added them in a very deliberate order so that we can maximize the flavor that we're getting out of each one of those ingredients. That's why we do it in a certain order. You know, you don't want to put your garlic in before your shallot or onion because garlic cooks a lot faster and you'll end up burning and ending up with a burnt, scorched, bitter taste before your shallot or your onion is cooked. So you always want to start with your bigger bulb first. So they're all members of the allium family, which includes leeks, scallions, chives. They're all part of the same family, and they all have that distinctive bite. Now, you know, if I'm cooking this for my family, I just taste it right off here. But since I'm trying to look like I'm cool and shit for you guys, I actually will taste it. So right about now, you should have about 1.5 cups of stock left.
Tell your sister to be patient.
Which sister?
Nancy, because she's saying mine is bubbling, but it doesn't seem to be absorbing as fast.
Stir, stir, stir. And it shouldn't be bubbling and spitting. It should be gentle little bubbles. Now here's a little thing about risotto. If you've ever gone to a restaurant and had arancini, which are these fried rice balls, I'm telling you that that is the leftover risotto from the previous night's service. Because you cannot reheat risotto to the same texture that we're going to make it today. Because as it sits in its juices, it's going to continue to absorb all of that liquid, and then it becomes really sticky. But that beautiful sticky rice is great for making arancini. So what you're going to do with any leftovers you have is the next day, you're going to take a scoop or whatever measuring tool you like, make all the balls about the same size. I make mine silver dollar size. And you're going to do a 3-step breading process, which is flour, egg, breadcrumbs, and then you're going to fry them in oil. Trust me when I tell you, you will thank me later. First of all, you're not going to be wasting any food, and second of all, you're going to have a delicious fried treat. Now, a lot of times when you get them in restaurants, they'll be filled with like a little piece of meat in the middle or a piece of cheese in the middle. You might want to make sure that your mushrooms are in the middle of your ball so that they don't fry and get nasty on the outside.
Or you can, if you want to use cheese, you can stick the piece of cheese in the middle and form it around it.
Sure. Sure, you could do that. Now this is exploded. I mean, it's so big. Can you guys see this? I mean, that's a lot of rice. I started out with 2 cups because it's sucking all of that fluid. Now, I know you're wondering how I'm touching this pan, and it's been sitting on the burner. No, my hands are not dead. When you work on an induction burner, the pan doesn't really get hot, and this happens to be an induction burner. The pan stays relatively cool because it's only the stuff that's inside that gets hot.
So you're telling me that we're going to have arancini tomorrow with the cacio e pepe?
No, I'm giving the leftover to Jack, and he's going to take it home.
What the fuck?
You don't even like arancini.
I like it better than giving it to him.
All right, so I have about 1 cup of stock left. So I'm going to test my rice. It's still a little crunchy, and it needs some more salt. So I'm going to use all 4 of my fingers and my thumb. Now, one of the things that I personally like to do is I like to put saffron in the stock and have that saffron scented chicken stock or vegetable stock to make like a saffron scented risotto. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to take our drippings from the pan and put them in. And about now, you should be needing to add the stock a little bit more frequently. It takes a while for the rice to get hot enough to actually absorb the liquid. A little bit more. Man, I made a really significantly mushroomy stock. You can taste just the barest hint of wine in it. You've got the beautiful shallots in there. This is looking really good, you guys. I hope yours is starting to look like rice and gravy. That's what it should be looking like right about now. Should look like nice short grain rice and a little bit of gravy. And your sauce should be starting to stick to the edge of the pan from where you're wiping, from where you're stirring. So you kind of want to use your spatula to wipe it down, wipe down the edge. I'm almost there, you guys. And I think I'm actually going to end up needing a little bit of extra moisture. So I'm actually going to probably have to put in some water. My rice is still a little crunchy. Now this is again one of those things that you can do to taste. Cook it the way you like your pasta. See, now mine is starting to look like a thick stew, and that's perfect. We're just about there. I'm almost there, and it's just a smidge more salt. Because the vegetable stock that I use had no salt at all in it. So, did you put the bread in there?
No.
So this is what your see how that looks like gravy? That's good. You want that. And when you see when we plate it, it's gonna kind of, it's not gonna stand up and say hello. All right. We're good. All right. So then, we're gonna add in our mushrooms. Now, mushrooms have a tendency to be a little bit delicate, especially our oyster mushrooms. So we're not going to be going, we're going to fold, which means start at the side away from you, scrape the bottom of the pan, and flip the rice over the top of the mushrooms. And I'm going to remove my pan from the heat, because I don't want any more liquid to be absorbed.
Or in this case, the heat from the pan.
Yeah, right. All right. Now we're going to add in our parsley. And we're going to do the same thing with folding, because we don't want to destroy the texture of our mushrooms. And even at this point, I'm going to have to add in some more liquid. because I'm losing my gravy with the mushrooms and the parsley. Oh, it's looking really good, you guys. And then we finish it with Parmesan cheese and whole butter. Because everything's better with cheese and butter.
And how much cheese are you putting in?
I'm putting in about 1/4 cup. And it should, again, be freshly grated Parmesan, Grana Padano, Pecorino Romano. It should never be something that comes in a tube or something that is pre-grated at the store, because it just does not melt. Now I'm going to talk about that for a second when I plate the risotto, because we're going to grate a little bit of fresh onto the top. And now we're going to add butter. And I like butter, so I'm going to be fairly generous, and I'm going to put 2 tablespoons in. And this is going to make it a little bit silky. And of course it's going to add another level of flavor. Now, if you can take your spatula or your wooden spoon and you could go through your risotto and it leaves a clean line, you need more liquid, because that's not what it's supposed to fall back on itself. And I think I want the rest of this parsley in there. The parsley just gives it a little bit of a fresh taste because it's not cooked. I mean, it's not really cooked. Okay. So, here's our risotto finished. You'll notice when I put it in the pan, see how it falls to the sides? It's not staying in a great big pile, it's loose. It's got movement to it. That's what you want, okay? You don't want it to stand up at attention. We're gonna take our Parmesan, we're gonna use a microplane grater just to gently dust the top. And that's it. That's all there is to it, you guys. So I hope that you learned something and that you can do this risotto yourself. You can make risotto with seafood stock and put shrimp in it. You could do it with chicken stock and put chicken in it. You could do it plain, like I suggested to the folks who don't like mushrooms, as a side dish. You know, like I said, we're doing this as a main today. I mean, and look at how it's like, it doesn't hold its shape in a great big pile. It runs out to the sides. And our mushrooms are clearly visible, so they're gorgeous. What other questions have you guys got before I go and eat with my family? Oh, so one of the questions I did get in person was, why do we do this at such weird times? Because this was my sister Nancy's idea, and she's on the East Coast, so we kind of do it so that she can make dinner for her family at a time that's convenient for the East Coast. If we did it at dinner time for us, it would be like, 9 o'clock at night for her, so it's ridiculous. When it comes time for us to do the appetizer and cocktail one, we'll be doing that at dinner time, Vegas time, and then the East Coast can have a late night cocktail. So, see how it all ran? It's like it didn't hold its shape. It's beautiful. It's perfect. I hate to say runny, but It kind of is, and that's what you want. You don't want a great big, gloppy, sticky, disgusting mess. Even with all the butter and everything in there, it's still going to form up and make arancini tomorrow, I promise you. So I am going to sign off. If you have questions, by all means, put them, post them, because I do go through them. Follow me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook for pictures of what I'm eating, when I'm eating, and who it's from. And as soon as I know when I'm going to do the midweek demo for you guys, I will let you know on Facebook. Thanks so much.